Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I am speaking with an amazing woman named Karen. Karen's journey is one of tears, heartache, pain, and unforeseen occurrences. Suffering through the death of her youngest son due to SIDS, an unfaithful partner, unsettling disputes with her family, job loss, and breast cancer, Karen fell face first into self-development. She quickly learned that her struggles had created a strong resilience inside her that led her to understand her life's mission. She is now the owner of Emergent Soul, a community that encourages people to feed their mind, body, and spirit. With a drive to change the world, Karen is here today to share her story, her strength, and remind us the importance of our struggles. Welcome, Karen.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, thank you. I so appreciate you taking some time out of your day to hang out with me and share a little bit about your journey. So we're both in Florida.
Yes.
We're both enjoying the hot summers down here.
Aren't we
I,
blessed?
yes, yes. Every year it's kind of like, is it going to get hot? And then every year it's like, yes, it's going to get hot. I love it though. I'm originally from Chicago, so I eat it up.
Okay. Okay. I say we have 4 seasons here: hot, hotter, hottest, and then blistering hot. So
Oh, that's a good one.
that's with a sprinkling of rain here and there.
Yes, I'll have to use that one for sure. So, listen, I kind of want to dive in. I want to dive into your journey, your story, what you're doing now, and all of the changes that you're making to people's lives and your clients and your community and your world and all the goodness. So, I kind of want to just start just hearing about, your past, maybe,
Okay.
one of the biggest challenges you've had in your life and how you overcame that and what you learned from it.
Well, that's a great question, Sabrina. And Emergent Soul actually is based on that premise. I'll start there. As far as Emergent Soul is based on the premise that what connects all of us, you, me, the people who are watching this video, those who watch the replay, but what connects all of us is our life altering experiences, because it's our experiences that actually help not necessarily define who we are, but help us uncover our true, authentic self. And those challenges, even though while we're going through them, we might think that we're the only one going through them. But once you express and share your challenges with someone else, you'll see and hear, you know what, that sounds like my struggle. That sounds like what I'm going through. Now, our journey may be a little bit different, but by sharing your story and sharing, being open and transparent with another person, it gives them a spark of hope to say, you know what, they made it, I can make it too. So to answer the question, as far as what is my biggest challenge, I've had several, I've had several, which I mentioned in my book, but the challenge that I think that has been the most impactful, that even led me to Emergent Soul, was the passing of my son, Kenneth, who passed away as an infant at almost 2 months old, and he passed December 23rd. So the holidays were always difficult for me. And I really didn't understand as far as SIDS or anything like that, being a young mother at the time. But his death was most impactful because my oldest son at the time, Christopher, was 2. After my son passed away, my ex-husband and I separated because 30 days after we buried our son, he actually was in another relationship that I wasn't aware of until then. So we buried my son. I got a divorce. I'm raising a 2-year-old by myself, and my emotions, as you can imagine, were all over the place. And literally, I would cry all of the time. And one day I walked in on Christopher. He was sitting on the floor, and he's always been a gifted child, but he was sitting on the floor talking to himself. And he was like, and I was listening to him, and he was saying, she's always crying. She's always looking at that baby's picture and crying. And Sabrina, that broke my heart even more, because I was like, oh my God, what am I doing to my son?
Oh.
Hindsight 2020, I made the decision, okay, I'm just not going to let him see me cry anymore, which means I held my emotions in, right? And I say hindsight 2020 because if he was smart enough to realize mommy is sad because Kenny is not here anymore, we could have had a discussion for him to understand, to understand his own terms. But that decision that I made to not allow him see myself cry anymore and hold my emotions in is my belief how I got breast cancer at 39, because, through the book, Louise Hay's You Can Heal Yourself, I had cancer on the left breast, and that's linked to unresolved grief. So it's my belief.
Wow.
I learned a lot. So I say that because it was almost like a rippling effect of one thing led to another. But those things, had a greatest impact. So from his losing him, from developing breast cancer to at the age of 40, jumping into self-development, it's my belief that he helped me birth Emergent Soul, because it was, emergent is defined as the process of coming into being, and soul gives life to the body. So it was my uncovering is actually how I found or was reclaiming my life and finding myself in my pieces of the puzzle. So if that makes sense.
Wow. Just sitting here listening to you speak, and just imagining the amount of emotion that would be going through someone's body when they lose a child, and then so soon after that realize that their partner is not being faithful.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of this sadness.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to people who hold a lot of hate, and you can almost feel it coming through their words when they're speaking. They're still years, 10, 15, 20 years later, holding on to so much pain and sadness and bitterness. What have you done? I know you mentioned self-development. What have you done in your life to be able to sit here today with me and be able to just speak what happened to you with so much, I don't want to say kindness, but almost compassion?
Well, that's a great question, and I won't sit here and be untruthful and say, "Oh yeah, 3 months afterwards I was able to do that," because that wouldn't be true. Everyone has their own grieving process, and it takes time. So it wasn't until, I would say 45, a few years into my self-development, where I learned a process called the victim process, where I had to actually go through it. Sometimes we have to go through things to experience it, to make it real for us. And actually, it was at a workshop where the instructor said you had to pick somebody who you feel harmed you the most. Okay. So immediately, or who hurt you the most. So immediately it's like, oh, that's my ex-husband.
Yeah.
The first husband.
Yeah.
Okay, that's him. That was easy. Okay. And then she's like, all right, you have a partner, and you have 2 minutes to share the story of how they hurt you.
Okay.
From your perspective. That was easy. So I went and said, the time I needed him the most, our son passed away. I just went in. It was, you could feel it. It still was raw for me. It still was
Yeah.
very raw, you know.
Yeah.
So after 2 minutes, she's like, okay, stop. Next part of it, I want you to tell the story of what you did to contribute to that. I was like, what? What are you talking about?
Okay.
Now you have 2 minutes to tell your partner how you, and this, I'm going to share this with you, but this is actually how I learned how to move past things. But
Yeah.
2 minutes to now share how you contributed to that situation. I was stumped. I was like, I have no idea. She said, Karen, what did you do to contribute? I was like, you're crazy. I did nothing. You have to tell. I was like, all right. He told me that if I went shopping, he was going to leave me. He told you that? I said, no, but you told me I have to tell you something. So I'm going to tell you that. So I made it up. I said, yep. He told me if I continued to shop, he was going to leave me. I made literally because I was like, I didn't do anything wrong. This was on him. She's like, okay, fine. She goes, all right, now you have 2 minutes to share how you did the same thing to someone else. Have you ever heard of the ugly cry?
Yeah, dude, all the time.
When I sat there and I had to think about how I did the same thing to somebody else, that was the point where it's not, I believe you don't break down, but you have a breakthrough. Wow. That was my breakthrough. And it was my breakthrough in the sense that the story that I had continuously told myself since even before meeting him and growing up in life is that when I needed somebody the most, they weren't there for me. So I continually believed that story, kept repeating that story, kept reliving that. When I need somebody, they're not going to be there for me. And then the breakthrough was I hadn't been there for myself.
Wow.
I didn't support myself. I would take actions that were not in my best interest, that were harmful to myself. And that was when I had the breakthrough. So it wasn't until that point where I could see past, it wasn't about him, but looking at myself to say, okay, Karen, you are responsible for your own happiness, not somebody else. Yeah. You are responsible for the actions that you take. It's time for you to put on your big girl panties.
Yeah.
Be responsible. So that's when I learned forgiveness. And it wasn't for him. I had to forgive so I could forgive myself in order to move forward.
Yes. You know what I love about this story is when a person many times, at least for myself, not trying to project onto you or anyone else, start falling into self-development, it's sometimes difficult because you're having to like look in the mirror a lot. And it's kind of like, there's nothing wrong with me. Everything is wrong with everybody else. The thing that I love about this story is even though you were kind of stuck at that second thing and you're kind of like, really? You stayed and you like continued the process to be able to get through the breakthrough. And I think that's really the important part is sometimes people start to kind of open that box and start to see things a little bit differently. And then something kind of hits them that they don't really appreciate hearing. And then they close it.
Right.
And then they never get to the healing that they need.
Mm-hmm. So you have to be ready and you have to walk through. And that's why I say life is it's the journey. It's not the destination, but it's the journey that we learn the most from, and that's the most impactful for ourselves.
Definitely. So now that you've done some or a lot of courses, certifications, reading, lectures, all the things that you've done in your life to get the education that you have as far as personal growth and self-development. Now, when you encounter challenges or struggles in today's day now, how do you handle that now? Do you have a process of a couple of steps that you do regularly to kind of make sure that you're not staying in the darkness for too long?
And that's a great question. And actually, the answer would be yes. And I have learned by taking time to get to learn about myself. And in growing up, the tendency for me is someone asks me a question, I want to be the first. I want to answer it. I want to do it right away. I have to learn how to pause and stop and redirect myself to say, okay, what are they really asking me? Check in with yourself first before you answer. Are you answering out of here or are you answering here? And when I'm in my head, it's facts. It doesn't mean anything. I have to get into my body. And in order to get into my body and my heart, I have to pause first.
Yeah.
So it's learning to take that pause and really feel. Because I'm a feeler, I have to feel what the question is. And then when I feel into it, then I can help move through my challenge. Because that's at the stage that I am at in this point in my life.
Mhm.
Where when I was younger, my process could have been very different. And I think as we go in stages, our processes are different. But for right now, I know that if I don't pause and then it's not that it's not my truth or my bare essence of it, but it's just the top layer. Where if I pause first and feel it, then I'm getting to the true essence of what the challenge is. And I can then take off my blinders and look at it from a different perspective. It might not be, and look at it from how the other person, if it's involving someone else, I can take a step back and say, okay, well, let me see how this person is looking at it. And then I look back at myself, okay, well, did I influence it?
Mhm.
Could I have said it differently? And that's one of the reasons I know I am not good with electronic communication because I'm fast and to the point I really try to have either eyeball to eyeball or at least hear it through my voice. Because if you hear what I'm saying, it's a different message versus electronic communication. But if I can pause and do that, that's how I work through it.
Beautiful. Do you think it's possible, one of the main things that I think a lot of individuals, male and female, have is they hear a story and they hear the outcome, and then they think to themselves, yeah, but that's not my story. Or my story is worse than that story. Or you don't understand. Do you think it's possible, if people do the work, for pretty much everyone to come to a point where they would feel some calmness around the challenges that they've gone through in their life?
I think it's very possible. And people have to work their process. In my book, I talk about that we're in three phases, and everything happens in three phases. The first is the storm. It's the release phase. Everything is hairy, scary, it's all over the place. If a person's in that phase, it doesn't matter what you trying to get help, them trying to get help. If all they can see is and feel is the pain, that's it. They're in that storm. It's not going to work. You have to wait until they're in the release phase. Okay, you know what? I see this is not helping me. I'm ready to make a change. It says when the student is ready, the teacher is going to appear. If I can't get out of my own way, is there someone else who can help me get through it? I'm ready now, though. Even though it's going to hurt, it's going to, what's worse? For me to stay here and not make the change and still keep in the storm? Or do I want to see the other side of that? What's more painful? Unfortunately, it's not the pleasure that they're moving for, but what's more painful, to stay or to make that change?
What's the third one?
And the last phase is the new beginning, that realization of I'm here now. Now, how do I keep moving forward?
So when you're talking about the storm, can the storm be well after? Like, I'm thinking of my own story, for instance. My son's father left, no child support. I'm working a minimum wage job, and just all the stereotypes of what a single mom stereotypically looks like. Just horrible. Just absolutely distraught and ridiculousness. But there comes a point where I now know that there's no child support,
Right.
year in, 2 years in, but I'm still super angry.
Mm-hmm.
So after the, kind of like the challenge has set in and
Mm-hmm.
now you're in life,
Mm-hmm.
is all of that considered the storm as long as you're still harboring all of those feelings? Is that all
Pretty
still
much.
the
I
storm?
would I would say it's pretty much still the storm, until you say, okay, until the point, and I'm not speaking for you, so I'm speaking at
Wow.
a high level, but the storm, it's not going to change until you say, okay, so it's been 10 years, I'm not getting the child support.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Are you looking, have I been able to take care of my son? Yeah. Does he have everything that he needs? You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
Wow.
are
So that
you,
storm lasts a while
it can,
sometimes.
it most definitely can, until you're ready to just, okay, and I'm not saying, I didn't collect I mean, my son was owed it. If he were to get a check for the arrears right now, it would be great. But I was still able to provide for him. He had everything that he needed, you know.
Yeah.
So you have to uncover, why are you still angry?
Yeah.
Is it the child support, or what are you still holding against your child's father?
Yeah.
You know,
Definitely. Do you
right?
think that
So,
there's a difference between storytelling with a good intent and storytelling with a bad intent? Like, for instance, I talk about my story all the time,
okay.
but I tell it differently now than I did when I was in the storm.
Hmm.
Do you think that there's a difference, or do you think that because I continue to tell my story, that I'm still hurting?
You know what? I think that sharing our stories is how people learn from. This is my opinion, right? And the premise of Emergent Soul, I say, share your stories, let other people know that they're not alone, because that's what connects us,
Yeah.
right? And they can see, hey, I survived, I moved forward, right? So that's
Yeah.
my belief, right? Only you can answer that, in the sense that, what's your intention for sharing your story? Is it to, and I'm like, I want to say this is not you, but I won't say I'm defining you. But how are you defining yourself? You know what I'm saying? Are you still defining yourself as that same person as who you are now? What's the intention of sharing your story? You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I think it's the intention behind it. Because I still, when I speak and I talk about overcoming adversities or challenges, even from breast cancer, I talk about it, but it's from an educational standpoint, to say, hey, this is what happened to me. I want you to have this information to be your own self advocate.
Yeah.
When it comes to dealing with grief, my son, his birthday and Christmas comes every year, and it comes up, it's still there, and I'm like, oh yeah, and I'll put a post on Facebook, my heavenly son, I remember you. And I will say that as a matter of, I feel I'm still connected to him, to honor our connection and our relationship, but it's not the same thing. My ex-husband and I, my Facebook account was hacked, so it's not any, but we were friends but 3 years ago, connected on Facebook. Who would have thought that? You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
We still have our oldest son, you know what I'm saying? Who would have thought that? So I share it now as this, and I don't share it from, and I'm sure his perspective of, he could probably say, oh yeah, Karen, you did XYZ, but it's still my perspective, and it's my perception. So I guess it's the intention behind the sharing, and only you could say what your intention really is. I didn't take it as being negative, but I would question and say, okay, well, do you really, really hate him? Your son is older now. He doesn't, like I said, my oldest is 27. If he got a check for those years from 16 years in arrears, child support, it would be wonderful,
Oh, yeah.
but it hasn't stopped him from doing or getting, you know what I mean? Or being who he is. So, I mean, is it, is there something there, or is it just, hey, this is who I was a single mom. I raised my son by myself. I didn't have the support of my family. I didn't have the support of my ex. And you know what? Look at me. I am her version life. I've done this, X, Y, Z, and whoo, I did it. Or is it, that's what I'm getting from you versus, I didn't get a child support. Jaguar, he's got this and that, and he didn't give me that much. You know what I'm saying? So it's the intention behind why you're sharing it. So I think you're sharing it to uplift versus to be angry in this, but only you truly know.
Yeah. I just sometimes I wonder, about the individuals that I'm speaking about and just the thought process that they have as far as like not being healed or still holding a resentment. And I don't have any feelings towards it at all. It's just, this is my story, and I think it's important to share it. So I'm just kind of curious. What's the number one lesson that you've learned from life?
The number one lesson in life that I have learned at this stage where I am right now is that tomorrow's not promised. Don't spend time in anger or hatred. Be present. Respect every precious moment in time that you have. I have a friend who's also a speaker, and she talked about heartbeats. We have a limited number of heartbeats. So think about, is your heartbeat worth something, or if it's not, preserve those heartbeats and be present.
I love that.
So it's being present. So right now, here today, that's what life is about. It's tomorrow's not promised. And what in this life is going to help me live my life to the fullest. So I'm not just what I say existing, but really living life abundantly. And that doesn't always mean financial, but love, health, happiness, that. And making sure I'm making every one of my heartbeats make a difference.
Yes. Oh, I love that. You only have a certain amount of heartbeats. It's a good way of putting it. Absolutely.
It's hard to stop tomorrow.
Yes.
So I'm making the best of it.
Yeah. So you just mentioned, health and whatever else you said, happiness. When you think about all of the things that make up life and who we are as people or as humans, what do you think defines success?
That's a good question. And I think that the answer will differ for many different people. But success for me today is being able to, accomplish a goal that I set for myself and be like, oh my gosh, I didn't think I could do it, but I did it. Even the smallest of thing, overcoming something that I was fearful of, just anything that I used to say, no, I can't do that, but I could do it. That I think is success. This is going to sound silly, but for the last 20 years, my second marriage, we were married for 20 years, and my ex-husband loved mushrooms. I could not stand mushrooms to the point where if he would buy mushrooms, I would make him put them on the bottom of the fridge because I didn't want to see mushrooms. I'm like, that's fungus, that's nasty. I don't want to see mushrooms. Didn't even want to see them, literally. So I will say about a month ago, a friend was like, you need to try mushrooms. Oh, that's fungus. I'm not eating that. That's disgusting. I'm not eating that. Today, I go to the grocery store. Today, meaning in 2022, the last 2 months, I will go to the grocery store and buy organic mushrooms, and I cook with mushrooms. So for me, that's a success because I changed my mindset on something that for the last 20 years, couldn't do it. No.
What was the turning point? Did you have them on some really delicious pizza one day, or what happened?
No, they were just, hey, you just need to cut it up. If you slice them real thin, you really can't taste them anyway. And I was like, oh, I don't want to eat this anyway. Cooked, ate. I was like, you know what? it's really not that bad. Call my ex-husband. Hey, guess what? I had mushrooms.
You know what's so funny about this, and my fiance will totally attest to this, is the same story.
No, I don't do mushrooms.
Because he loves mushrooms, and I refused to eat them. And probably in 2021, I don't know what the turning point was, but I want to say mine was on pizza, because he always did half mushroom. And I think one day I wanted like an extra slice, and it had freaking mushrooms on it.
And ate it.
And I like took, some of them off, and I'm like, whatever. There's like a few little halves in there, and I ate it. I'm like, wow, these are actually pretty freaking good. So yeah, I tried it one day cooking. I like bought them on a whim and tried it in a recipe or something. And now literally, I'm not even kidding, I eat mushrooms every single day. Every day in something. I'll put them in my eggs. I'll put them on top of salmon. I'll put them in the pasta. I even put it in the ground beef to make it so that there's more like tacos. I'll dice them up. And my son had the same thing where he, because I didn't eat them, he didn't eat them. And I remember the first time we were making tacos with ground beef, and I was chopping up mushrooms, and he was doing the ground beef, and he's like, what are those mushrooms for? And I'm like, I put it in the ground beef. He's like, no, you don't. I was like, yeah, I do. He's like, no, you don't. You do not do that. I'm like, I have been putting mushrooms in our tacos for over a year now. You have been eating mushrooms. He's like, no, you're lying. All this stuff. He literally almost we're both very emotional. He actually got like flush, like visibly upset when I poured the mushrooms into the ground beef. Because he thought I was ruining the mushroom or the tacos. Yeah. And then it looked perfect. You can't even tell that they're in there. We had them and they tasted identical, and he was just blown away. That is so funny. Look at us.
So that's success. And it has to do with mindset.
Yes.
It's not the mushroom, but it's mindset. So for me, that's what I call success. But yes, so now we eat mushrooms, but it really is that we were able to change our mindset on something that we were so adamant that we would never do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, that is so cool. Wow. Bonding over mushrooms. I love it. If you could wish for anything, what would you wish for?
Oh, that's a good one. If I could wish for anything, I think my wish would be that people would interact with each other with more empathy, more compassion, more patience before taking action or even speaking something that can be harmful. And the reason I say that is there's a lot of changes going on in the world right now. Even pre-COVID, the way that people have interacted with one another and just everything. And that in the heat of something, words are spoken and they can't be taken back. And it's my belief that words have power, behind them. But I think that if people would pause and reflect, or just pause before they act, and respond versus react, the world would be a different place. And I think right now, on a universal level, not that we're responsible for somebody else's healing, but if we took those steps for ourselves, it would make a change.
How do you think we get to that point?
That I don't know. I guess keep talking about it, keep wishing on it. And if more people hear and agree, that it'll spread, that they'll say, okay, that's what I'll do for myself. And I'll just keep hoping and wishing and say, hey, it'll catch on, and it'll happen.
What if everybody signed up to be a member of Emergent Soul?
Ooh, that would be awesome, Sass.
Would that change happen, do you think?
It would be that would be the what does Gandhi say? Be the change that you want to see. Well, I think that would be the community that we would want to see. We would reflect back to others how we want to live, and that's what I try to do.
That's awesome. Speaking of Emergent Soul, tell us
Yes.
what your company is and what you do, how you help all the humans.
So, well, I'll show you this. So I just published my book, Emergent Soul, Rising from Life's Darkest Moments. So that's on my website, and it actually talks about, as I talk about the 3 phases in life, and gives examples of things of my journey, of my journeys. But pre-COVID, we used to have speaking events. We would come together, big conferences and things like that. But it's in the redevelopment phase, where I wish to have small groups, community women get together to share our stories and help each other grow and nurture each other, so the world can make a change. Because there are a lot of people out there who are hurting. There are a lot of people who are thinking I'm alone, and we're really not alone, in the sense that and I don't want to diminish anybody's adversity or challenge, but it's really not. Someone has experienced what you've experienced, you know what I mean, and been able to overcome that challenge. So, but if people are afraid to speak about it and share it, then people will continue to think it's just me, when we should be about sharing and giving. Because if it's my hope, and I know people say this a lot, but literally, if someone can say, hey, it's because of you, I didn't do X, Y, Z, or you made a difference in my life, that's what gives me that extra to keep going. Yeah. Plus I have, my desires, what I want for myself, but it makes me feel good to say, hey, you know what? Someone benefited from me sharing my story. And that's a good thing. I did a good thing.
That's awesome. Do you do coaching, one-on-one, or group coaching, or Zoom coaching?
I do. So I have on my website, you'll see ways to work with Karen. Yes. As well as you'll find a link for my book. It's available on Amazon, or if you reach out to me, I'd be happy to mail you a copy, autograph. But there are ways to work with me through group coaching, one-on-ones, and things like that. So, awesome. And hopefully someday soon we'll have some more events coming together. So
that's awesome. And then, as far as social media, is your social media listed on your website?
Yes, I think it is. Yes, but you can find me on YouTube. I do have a YouTube channel where I have a podcast called Conversations with Karen. We're on Facebook as well as Twitter, all under Emergent Soul. So
beautiful. I love it. Very, very cool. Yes. What do you what is your biggest dream for Emergent Soul?
My biggest dream, my biggest big dream is that we're going to be featured or on network television, like I'll say similar to a Ayanla Van Zant or an Oprah network or something, where we can have people talking about their adversities and how they overcame them. That would be the huge, ginormous dream.
Would you be the talk show host?
I guess so.
You would be the Oprah?
I'd be the Oprah. Would you be my co-host?
I would love to be. I would love to be. So, that's awesome. What would an actual network or a TV show? How big you going?
I think well, we're dreaming. So why don't we start off with the show and then get a network?
I think that's what Oprah actually did.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Absolutely. Well, bigger things have happened. We're trying to go to Mars right now. So
Never say never. That's what I've learned. Never say never.
Exactly, 100%.
Mhm.
Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. I so appreciate you being here, hanging out with us. I want to ask before we start to close up here,
Mhm.
females that are listening right now live who are possibly going through some challenges or some struggles right now in their life
Mhm.
and are feeling just a sense of just helplessness.
Mhm.
What would be some advice that you would give to them right now?
Well, the first thing I would say, look in the mirror and put your arms around yourself and give yourself a hug and
I
just say,
love that.
it's going to be okay. This too shall pass. What it is that you're going through doesn't define who you are, and so once you make the decision of saying who you are, take steps to live towards that. But it's not the divorce, it's not the children, it's not the job, it's not the thing. It doesn't define you, but it's who you are at your true essence. So just keep going, keep pushing, and it will believe that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Just keep
100%.
putting one foot in front of the other. It will happen. And get
100.
support. Don't be afraid to ask for help if you need help.
Yeah, that's the main thing. I think that's the issue that so many of us deal with is not feeling like asking for help or just feeling unworthy to ask for help.
Right.
I know that was a big thing for me.
Mhm.
Then a lot of times you get through it and people are like, you never asked for help. And it's like,
Like, but I did, but you didn't. Well, no, you didn't say specifically. So
yeah.
you will find your person to help you, the right person. Just don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah.
Keep asking.
100%. Well, this
Mhm.
was absolutely fantastic. I so appreciate you being here, hanging out with us. Before we close up, any closing thoughts?
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show today. This has been great. And closing thoughts are the closing words for my emergent souls, that you're not meant merely to exist in life. You are meant to live life most abundantly.
I
So
love it.
let's live.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're the best. I so appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day. For those that are listening live, thank you for being here. Thank you for hanging out with us. And for those of you watching on replay, make sure that you hashtag replay so that we know that you are here and you were hanging out um, and we can shoot you some love. So thank you so much for joining us here on Her Version. This community is expanding every single day and it's filled with females who are striving to do better than they did yesterday. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. If you have an amazing story to share of struggle to triumph, make sure you reach out to me here or at herversion.life. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I'm so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows people to share their truth and inspire others. As always,